Hi, my name is Dixon Broer. I'm with Elimishia LLC, a small home-based bakery. Today, we'll be talking about commercial kitchen laws and rules, brought to you by Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Association. In Tallahassee, our regulating agency is the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. All the information below can be found on FDAC's website. Commercial operations. Taking your cottage food operation to the next step to a retail food operation can be exciting and a little overwhelming. For this to be a rewarding and successful venture, you must understand and weigh all the pros and cons of pursuing a retail food venture. Where do you begin? Let's make sure that you have all of your business operations, all of your business operation plans in place. Before beginning business, make sure you have or already have applied for your EIN with the IRS. Your business is registered with the Florida Department of Corporations, that you have any insurance or liability insurance in place. And if you're going to have employees, that you've registered with the Department of Revenue to pay the appropriate expenses and payroll taxes. Now that you've made sure that you have all of your business operations plans in place and that you're operating as a legit business, take a few minutes to detail a few more business plans. A description of your business and who the main operators and contributors are. Who's going to be in your operation every day? Who's going to be your who's going to handle the taxes, who's going to handle the expenses, who's going to handle the shopping. Think about that and put that in place. What products you will carry and produce. Have a detailed list of the items that you want to produce on a daily basis. Where are you planning to produce your products? Are you going to do it in a commissary kitchen? Are you going to lease a kitchen, or are you going to rent a building? The cost of renting such buildings, the cost of leasing a commissary, the cost of renting a commercial kitchen, make sure you understand those expenses well. The cost of your inventory, how much is it going to cost you to buy everything? The bags, the food, the ingredients, the labels, the ink. Think of all of those expenses. How are you going to distribute your products? Do you have a plan in place for distribution? Where are you planning to distribute those products? Are you going to do supermarkets? Are you going to do farmers markets? Think about that. And how are you going to fund your business? You're not going to be making money right off the bat. So what's your backup plan for money? Are you going to plan to hire employees? Are you going to be the main worker? How many employees can you afford to plan? How many employees can you actually afford to pay at the beginning of this process? Business expenses, such as payroll, internet, insurance, everything, all business expenses, keep in mind. Will you need loans to begin your operation? Do you have enough money right now to begin with cash, or will you have to apply for a small business loan? The SBA, Small Business Administration, excuse me, is a great place to look for small business loans. Your commercial operations. Also take a few minutes to sit down and think about these few questions. How inundated is the market with similar items? What makes your product superior to other products like yours on the market already? How do you plan to target your target customer? How are you going to market to those people? Again, where are you going to operate? Is it going to be a mobile or retail location? How much do you need to get started? How much cash flow do you need right now to get started? How do you plan to maintain your operations? You're not going to be making money right off the bat. So how are you going to pay your employees? How are you going to pay rent? How are you going to pay the commissary? What's your backup plan? How do you plan to manage and staff your operation? Are you going to be in there every day? Are you going to plan to hire a management, who's going to be your main head point for operating your operation every day. Let's talk about a few pros and cons of entering the food business. Pros: you'll be taking your business from your home to a more public setting. You'll have better opportunity for growth, increased business company awareness, and definitely increased earning for, excuse me, increased earning potential. And also the satisfaction of growing a company based on your ideas. The cons: the time investment. Anything that is needed for that company will come basically from your time. If the business is lacking an employee, or you're short on staff, it's going to be on you. The financial investment. Also, if you fall short on money somewhere, that also is going to be on you. If your building or your business requires a large piece of equipment, that's going to be on you. So it's a large financial investment. Your hobby becoming a job that must produce income. A lot of people don't think about this, but when you think that you enjoy what you're producing and you're making so much, until it becomes an obligation to make on a daily basis, and it must make money for you to continue operations. The emotional and physical stress. When things aren't going well, it's like you think to yourself, what have I done wrong? What can I do better? The physical stress is also there. It's a lot of stress when you have to stand in there and produce for a lot of people. You have to think about, is your body physically able to do that? The main coverage for all jobs is on you. If you fall short and you're short staffed, then you got to fill in. And then there's always the risk of failure. Weighing possible outcomes can prevent a lot of undue stress. Once you seriously weigh the pros and cons and answered a few operational, answered a few operational questions, and your answer is still yes, then go ahead and move on to the next step. One of the ways that you can get permitted as a food vendor from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services as a mobile food establishment. Mobile food establishments are individuals selling food other than fresh fruits and vegetables from trucks, trailers, or other mobily moved structures, non-fixed structures such as tables or booths or kiosks. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services regulates mobile food establishments that sell only prepackaged foods or non-potentially hazardous food items, including foods that are not temperature controlled for safety, including iced confections, coffee, tea, soft drinks, pastry products, popcorn, and candies. Raw fish products that include no processing on site, such as whole fish or shrimp with heads on. Fresh squeezed juice meeting specific requirements. Okay, before we move on, we're going to talk about a few definitions, because these words will pop up along the way in the rules. Before we start talking about the rules, we want to make sure that you understand these few words here, or these laws. Mobile food establishment definitions. Below listed are a few definitions for a few words that'll pop up along in the laws and rules. And I wanted to make sure that you understood what they were before we move forward. Okay, so a certified food protection manager is a person responsible for all aspects of food operations at food establishments regulated by the FDACS under Chapter 500. Mobile food establishment definitions. Below listed are a few definitions for terms that will pop up along the weigh-in reading of the rules. Okay, so a certified food protection manager is a person responsible for all aspects of food operations at food establishments regulated by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services under Florida Statute Chapter 500. The commissary is a support location for mobile food establishments that meet all regulations of Chapter 500. These establishments must be permitted or licensed by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, or the Florida Department of Health. Such locations include catering operations, restaurants, grocery stores can be considered for approval as a MFE commissary. When not required at the MFE, commissaries may provide a 3-compartment sink for washing, rinsing, and sanitizing of equipment or utensils in addition to hand wash and restroom facilities. The services required of the commissary will be based on the food sold and the MFE type and capabilities. The private residence may not be used as a commissary. So as in the rules for the cottage food laws, you cannot produce food at your home anymore. Mobile food emablishment. A mobile food establishment is a food establishment that are self-propelled or otherwise movable, from place to place, such as a truck, trailer, anything that's self-propelled, or a non-permanent structure such as a kiosk or a table at a farmer's market where pre-packaged food products are sold. Potentially hazardous food that requires time or temperature control for safety to limit pathogenic microorganism growth or toxin formation. Potable water that meets the quality standards of Chapter 62-550 of the Florida statutes and is satisfactory for drinking, culinary, and domestic purposes. Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, HACC plan. A HACC plan is a written document identifying food safety hazards in your process and how you will control these inherent hazards. Mobile food establishment laws, rules, and regulations. This is section 5000-4.0041, mobile food establishments and commissaries. 1A, mobile food establishments shall meet all applicable requirements as specified in the mobile food permit requirements incorporated by reference and available online at the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services website. So basically, you must follow all of the steps listed online in order to qualify for approval for your mobile food permit. 1B, each mobile food establishment not operating in conjunction with a permitted food establishment will require its own permit and is subject to all applicable fees. A permitted food establishment may operate one mobile food establishment without paying an additional permit fee. Any additional mobile food establishments will require a separate permit and are subject to all applicable fees. So you can have one food truck and that permit is only for that truck. If you get another truck, you will also have to go through getting that vehicle or that mobile business permitted. Mobile food establishments shall not operate independent of commissary approved by the department unless otherwise specified in the rule chapter. Each mobile food establishment shall submit to the department a completed commissary letter of agreement. Okay, so you have to have a commissary in place if you're operating as a mobile establishment. The commissary letter of agreement shall be executed on an annual basis. That is listed as one of the steps in the rules online, or in the application process online. They list all the requirements of maintaining your permit. The mobile food establishment shall make this agreement available to the department upon request. If the department shows up on your doorstep and they want to see a copy of your commissary letter, you're obligated to make that available to them. Each, excuse me, each mobile food establishment shall report to a commissary each day of operation. So you're going to show up to your commissary every day, and there are a few things you need to do when you go to your commissary. You need to make sure that all of your utensils are cleaned, washed, and sanitized. You'll dispose of any of your liquid or solid waste. You'll make sure that your mobile unit is cleaned, washed, and sanitized. Any equipment in your mobile unit is clean, washed, and sanitized. You can wash the outside of your vehicle at a commissary, but it's not required. The only requirement is that you do not dispose of any liquid or solid waste at any offsite location other than your commissary. All waste, all liquid and solid waste must be disposed of at your commissary, but you are allowed to wash your vehicle somewhere else. Okay, and also in this section, it talks about if you are operating your mobile business somewhere other than the city that your commissary is located in. Say if you're doing event offsite somewhere in maybe let's say for instance, St. Pete, then you will need to have a commissary agreement in St. Pete that you check in every day if you're not coming back to your main commissary. You're also required to have a commissary letter of an agreement for any other commissary other than your main commissary. So if you're doing that 2-day event in St. Pete, you'll also need to have a commissary agreement with that establishment. Mobile food establishment shall not process or prepare exposed, potentially hazardous foods within the mobile food establishment without first obtaining a food permit. Processing or preparing food includes combining ingredients, mixing food, heating or cooking food, cutting, slicing food, or pre-packaging of bulk foods. So no prep inside of your food unit. That must be done at your commissary. Exemptions to that rule are any mobile businesses that are selling fresh fruits or vegetables. A commissary must be permitted as a food establishment, public food service establishment, or a food service establishment. So your commissary must have all of its permitting in place and in working order and in active status. MFEs are not allowed to process or prepare exposed potentially, I think we just went through that one. I think that's a repeat of one above. So moving on to number 2. Full service mobile food dispensing vehicles that process or prepare potentially hazardous foods within the mobile unit, like hot dogs, hamburgers, should contact the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Mobile food units that operate on institutional property, such as say a school or a church or a hospital, that person needs to reach out to the Department of Health for permitting. MFEs must have a current agreement with a commissary and be capable of visiting the commissary each day of operation unless exempt. Employees or agents of the MFE handling foods shall not have bare hand contact with ready to eat foods at any time. Food products sold must be from approved sources such as an inspected and permitted food establishment. Cottage food items are not approved to be sold from MFEs. So all of your food items have to be prepackaged and processed in a permitted facility. Basically, you can't sell anything that has been baked or prepared in your home when you were operating as a cottage food operation. Raw milk may contain harmful disease-causing bacteria and shall not be sold. Florida only allows the sale of grade A pasteurized milk. Any MFE that is in an open air environment must protect the food from weather, bugs, birds, dust, rain. Protect your food from the elements. You also must provide only single serve articles for use for the consumers. MFEs cannot operate at multiple locations at the same time under a single mobile food establishment permit. So you can't have one mobile unit over here and another mobile unit over there under the same permit. You would have to have two separate permits for those vehicles. Food products and supplies must be stored only at permitted commissaries and warehouses and not in private residence. Anything that you use to produce your food items needs to be stored at your commissary. Nothing can be stored in your home now. MFEs may provide prepackaged food items that are labeled as required. Okay, so basically you'll follow the same laws as when you were labeling your cottage food products. There are a few different additions to this label, like you'll have to include artificial color or flavoring, chemical preservatives, allergens, I believe is on the other label, net weight or volume of the contents. And you'll also have to include the name of the business and the manufacturer, packager, or distributor. Packaging materials must be manufactured from food grade materials, and you can only use single-use articles only. So everything that you package your food in must be food grade, and you can't reuse it. MFAs may be permitted to have or process exposed food items such as ice confections, snowballs, shaved ice, and smoothies. Non-potentially hazardous beverages with or without ice, with or without garnishment. Non-potentially hazardous bulk beverages, pastries, pastry products, popcorn, kettle corn, candies, including shell nuts that are candied or sugar coated, confections like cotton candy, candy apples, peanut brittle, anything that's non-hazardous. Basically, you can serve coffee beverages with dairy or synthetic dairy like cafe con leche and a latte. As long as these facilities are adequately protect food, and they have the equipment and utensils to process these foods on site. All water must be drinkable water. The water is, if you don't have water available from traditional state approved plumbing, potable water tanks may be used for hand washing purposes as allowed by the food code. Potable water tanks must be constructed of food grade materials and enclosed from the filling inlet to the discharge. Basically, the next few rules talk about your tanks and what they need, what the requirements are for those tanks. So make sure you follow all of those requirements when having your tanks installed. And at least the person that's installing them knows these requirements before it's placed into your mobile unit. Okay, we're going to move on to number 18. Specific requirements are based on the type of food sold and processed. On the next slide, we're going to go through a table. There are a few different types of food, and each of those types of food have different requirements. Okay, food type number one is prepackaged, non-potentially hazardous foods. And we'll go through each step below. There's a whole nother list. And excuse me if I get tongue-tied a little bit on these words. They are tongue-tying. Number two, prepackaged, potentially hazardous foods. Prepackaged, individually portioned frozen novelties. Fresh squeezed juice processors. Preparation of bulk dispensing of non-potentially hazardous food. Fish products, raw fish products. Okay, number one, prepackaged, non-potentially hazard foods. MFEs, which limit food sales to prepackaged, non-potentially hazard food, must have adequate storage space for the food product so that the food is protected, containers for solid waste, and maintain cleanable non-food contact surfaces. Number two, prepackaged, potentially hazardous foods. MFEs, which have food sales of prepackaged, potentially hazardous foods, must have a certified food protection manager on site, storage space for the food products, containers for solid waste, maintain cleanable non-food contact surfaces, refrigeration, heating of hot holding equipment to keep the food at proper temperature, a product thermometer, and the capability to sanitize at the thermometer. Prepackaged, individually portioned frozen novelties. MFEs that sell prepackaged frozen desserts must have sufficient freezer space for storage of frozen food products. Food protection, maintain cleanable, non-food contact surfaces, a freezer thermometer, and containers for solid waste. Okay, continuing from before, when all the above conditions cannot be met, the juice processor must cease operations. So if you cannot meet all of the requirements set above, then you must cease operating as a juice vendor unless you follow the rules set below. MFE can sell prepackaged fresh squeezed juice if the entity that extracts and packages the juice is a permanent food establishment and complies with FDA food code for retail or for wholesale and is regulated by a government entity. If the prepackaged juice is sold by a mobile food establishment, the prepackaged juice must be held at or below 41 degrees and be properly labeled with a warning or meet a 5-log reduction. A 5-log reduction is a detail of what you've done as a producer to reduce the pathogens that commonly are found in juices like E. coli. A warning label can only be used if the mobile food establishment is the same business entity as the permanent food establishment extracting and producing the juice, i.e., the original firm is considered a retailer. A warning label should read, warning, this product has not been pasteurized and therefore may contain harmful bacteria that can cause serious illness in children, the elderly, and persons with weakened immune systems, as stated in the food code. If the prepackaged juice is from a different business entity other than the MFE, the juice must have a 5-log reduction per the Florida statute 21 CFR 120. MFEs that extract and package juice must comply with all of the regulations, which includes but is not limited to an adequate HACCP plan, affixing a warning label to the packaged juice if a 5 reduction log has not been met, E. coli testing of product, and sanitation procedures. Okay, we've gotten through the juice. Let's move on to the bulk dispensing of potentially hazardous foods. Bulk dispensing of potentially hazardous foods, MFEs that have been, MFEs that have sales, which include preparation of non-hazardous foods or dispense bulk non-hazardous food products such as nuts, teas, candies, spices, and pickles or acidified foods, however, go through a different permitting process. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services has a link on their website for acidified foods. So when you're selling anything that you would consider acid, like there's a bunch of different foods on there that you wouldn't consider acidified that I wouldn't have thought that were acidified. So to be on the safe side, when you're permitting and you're clicking around on the retail food permit link, if you're dealing with acidified foods, make sure that you click on that link and make sure that your product does not have to go through that process. I'm sorry, continuing on here. So nuts, trees, candies, spices, and pickles must comply with the following. Have present a certified food protection manager during operation. Have adequate storage space for food products so that the food is protected. Have containers for solid waste. Have potable water supply. Maintain cleanable food and non-food contact surfaces. Possess an operable hand washing sink in the unit with hot and cold running water under pressure. Possess wastewater tank 15% larger than a potable water tank. No bare hand contact of ready-to-eat food is permitted. A 3-compartment sink must be accessible either within the unit or at the commissary. If the 3-compartment sink is provided by a commissary, then the MFE must have extra equipment and utensils on site that have already been washed, rinsed, sanitized, and protected from environmental contamination for use as described in the FDA Food Code. Okay, I'm not really sure how many people are going to be handling raw seafood, but there might be a few of you out there. So to handle as a mobile food vendor, to handle raw seafood, MFEs may sell raw fish products like whole or eviscerated fish and head-on headless shrimp. All processing of seafood must be conducted at a permanent food establishment meeting the requirements to process seafood. The MFE must have a certified food protection manager on site, storage for food products so that the food is protected from contamination, and possesses the following: a calibrated scale with calibration records, refrigeration, a thermometer, containers for solid waste, potable water supply, wastewater container large enough to hold all wastewater generated within the unit, hand washing capabilities using gravity-fed potable water. Containers and coolers with wet ice used to maintain fish products at the proper temperature must be self-drained with the wastewater flowing into a liquid waste holding tank. So you can't take your cooler outside and pop that little pop thing on the side and dump the water out on the ground. That water must be dumped into wastewater containers. Note, if an MFE operation sells a combination of food products, the food product with the most stringent requirement for food protection must be followed. Food types 1 and 3, prepackaged non-hazardous foods and prepackaged individually portioned frozen novelties listed above may not require a commissary. That those determinations will be made at the time of application. Let's talk a little bit about, let's go over a little bit more detail about the commissary agreement. MFEs are required to have a written agreement with a commissary. The commissary letter, let's back up. Okay, since all mobile food establishments are required to have an agreement with a commissary, let's just talk about the commissary agreement a little bit here. MFEs required to have a written agreement with a commissary must complete the commissary letter of agreement. The commissary letter of agreement is to be submitted with the permit application at the initial inspection. Permit approval is contingent upon verification of an approved commissary facility. After the MFE permit is issued, the commissary letter of agreement is to be completed and signed by the MFE owner and the owner of the commissary on an annual basis. MFEs are to have commissary letter of agreement available for FDACS food inspectors doing inspection. Each mobile food establishment shall report to a commissary each day of operation to store or replenish supplies, clean utensils and equipment, or dispose of liquid and solid waste, with the exception of mobile food establishments that sell only prepackaged foods and have all necessary support equipment located in your unit. For mobile vehicles, a service area may be provided at the commissary for cleaning and servicing of the mobile unit. The service area must be equipped to furnish potable water and provide facilities for the drainage and disposal of liquid waste. The exterior of the mobile unit is permitted to be washed at any location provided the wastewater does not cause a sanitary nuisance. Again, you're able to wash the outside of your unit anywhere, but you are not allowed to dump anything from that unit at an off-site location other than your commissary. Okay, we went through all of the rules. So on Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services website, they have all of the steps listed. They have all of the links that you need for outside departments. They have all of the links to the Florida code, the Florida food code, and the statutes. The steps for applying for the permit are listed here below. Review the permit requirements, make sure you meet all the permit requirements, complete a commissary letter of agreement, submit a food establishment inspection application, you'll pay your fees, and then you'll contact the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services if you have any questions. There's a link right there to the mobile food establishment permitting process. They make it quite easy for you. I mean, they have gone out of their way to answer all of the questions for you before you ask them. All right, let's move on to the retail food permitting process. All right, let's move along to the retail food permit section. The retail food establishment permit is also regulated by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. A retail food establishment operation is any part of a food establishment involved in the processing, packing, holding, or preparing of food for sale directly to consumer. This does not include wholesale food operations. Businesses that typically fall in this category are grocery stores, supermarkets, convenience stores, coffee shops, retail bakeries, meat stores, smoothie bars. I think our business type would be prepackaged food items is where we fall, but they also hemp and CBD products also fall in that category. What we just talked about, the mobile food establishment also falls in our category. As long as you're dealing in non-potentially hazardous food items, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services will be the regulating agency. Okay, retail food establishments fall under Florida Statute 500.12, food permits and building permits. Okay, we're going to go through these rules. Some of them can be quite long, so I'll just paraphrase for you. All right, 1A, a food permit from the department is required of any person that operates a food establishment or retail food establishment, except below. Persons operating minor food outlets that sell food that is commercially prepackaged and non-potentially hazardous. They do not require time or temperature controls, as long as the space does not exceed 12 linear feet and no other food will be sold in that establishment. Any person that's subject to federal or state inspections on a regular basis. Persons selling peanuts or legumes in the shell, parched, roasted, or boiled. Person selling any type of sugar cane that's been boiled, boiled and bottled on a premises that is already on a premises located within the state. Such bottles must contain a label listed of the producer, name, and the street address. All of the ingredients must be included. The net weight and volume of the product must be included. And there has to be a statement on that label that reads, "This product has not been produced in a facility permitted by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services." Each food establishment and retail food store regulated under this chapter must apply for and receive a food permit before operations begin. An application for a food permit from the department must be accompanied by a fee in the amount preset and determined by the department. The department shall adopt a rule. They shall have a fee structure basically already in place. Food permits are not transferable from one person or a physical location to another. So you can't allow your mom to use your food permit on the south side while you're doing business, and your permit is non-transferable at all. Food permits must be renewed along with your commissary agreement on an annual basis. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is the regulating agency for this food type. Any food that's prepackaged and non-potentially hazardous. The department may, by rule, establish conditions for the manufacturing, processing, packaging, holding, or preparing of food, the selling of food at wholesale or retail, or transporting of food to protect the public health and promote public awareness by protecting the purchasing public from injury by merchandising deceit. So in cottage food laws, the department wasn't able to set rules or conditions for us operating. In this setting, in a retail setting, the department can set rules. The department can set conditions for your processing and packaging of your products. The department does care if you're merchandising, if you are deceiving the public about your product. So be careful and thoughtful about that rule. When any person applies for a building permit to construct, convert, or remodel any food establishment, outlet, or retail food store, the authority issuing such permit shall make available to applicant a printed statement provided by the department regarding the applicable sanitation requirements. Okay, so basically in this rule, they're saying there are sanitation requirements for all retail food establishments. And the department will make that list available to you if you ask for it. So you can't apply and then not meet the standards and say, oh, I didn't know that those sanitation requirements existed. This rule here is saying that the department is required to provide that list for you if you request it, and If you do not request it, the department is not going to be held at fault for it. The department shall furnish the distribution a statement that includes a checklist. Also, again, in this rule, they're saying there's a checklist of sanitation requirements. There's also a checklist for building requirements available by the department. If you request those lists, all checklists, then the department is required to make those lists available to you. The department may provide assistance when requested by the applicant. So if you have a question, if you're on track, or if you if this requirement necessarily needs to be met and you want somebody to come out, or you just want assistance from an inspector from the department, they will send someone out possibly, but there also may be a fee. The building permit authority or other subdivision of local government may not require the department to approve construction or remodeling plans for food establishments and retail food services as a condition of any permit or license at the local level. Any person selling or distributing for sale any candy containing more than 0.5% but less than 5% by volume of alcohol must apply for a food permit. Okay, so in this rule, they're saying if your candy includes alcohol at all, you must make the department aware of the alcohol content. And at that time, they will determine if you need further permitting with the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, because that department regulates alcohol. So at the time of permitting, they'll let you know if you need to go further with your permitting. The department may suspend immediately upon notice any permit issued under this section if it finds that any of the conditions of the permit have been violated. So if you've been deceitful in your permitting process, if you're practicing deceitful practices and the department finds out, they send someone in to inspect, and your license may be suspended, revoked, or further. The department shall have access to any food establishment for the purpose of ascertaining compliance with this section. Again, if the department receives any type of complaint, especially consistent complaints, and they send an inspector out to your establishment, you're required to let them in. If you do not let them in, then you may be held to disciplinary actions. In an attempt to alleviate duplications so that we aren't running around all over the place, applying in different departments for food permits, they've set forth rules. And this is why the departments are divided up in who handles what. So potentially non-hazardous food items are handled by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Prepackaged non-hazardous food items that are delivered to institutions such as schools, churches, hospitals, those type institutional places. The Department of Health handles those. Potentially hazardous food items are handled by the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulations. The department shall adopt rules for the training and certification of managers of food establishments and food service establishments regulated under this section for the training and certification of department personnel. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services has links to trainings for certified food management. They have also links to other trainings if you deem them necessary for your organization. Like I said, that they have done a really good job at putting together a website that answers your questions prior to asking the question, and also providing references if you need to go further. In conducting any pre-operational or other inspection, the Florida Department may enforce provisions of the Florida Building Code relating to food establishments. So if you go in, if an inspector goes in and something is not right, then your operation may be held up until it's brought up to code. A person who applies for or renews a local business tax certificate to engage in business as a food establishment or retail food store must exhibit a current food permit or an active letter of exemption from the department before the local business tax certificate may be issued or renewed. Okay, so you'll have to have an current or active permit before you can go to the Florida Department of Corporations and apply for your business certificate tax. All right, so we went through all the retail laws and rules. These are the steps below listed as on the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services website. Again, they've done a really great job. The steps are: review the minimum construction standards. Optional, you'll apply for a voluntary plan review. Designate a certified food protection manager. Ensure you've met all processing requirements before you apply. Once you're sure you've met all those requirements, then go ahead and apply for your food permit. And then you'll pay you pay your fees. The department will be in contact with you after that. There's a link there to the retail food establishment permits, and you just follow the steps. Okay, we've reached the end of the boring laws and rules. And in summary, laws and rules may be a little intimidating. Don't allow a little intimidation to stop or slow you in pursuing your dream. Start with a regulating agency, read over all the rules and regulations until you understand. And more importantly, reach out to those agencies regarding gray areas, or if you don't understand a rule or regulation. It's as simple as asking the question. No questioning is stupid when you're trying to take your dream to the next level. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I wish you all luck in pursuing your retail food establishment dreams or your mobile food establishment dreams. Thank you and have a great day.